Inferiority complex. Consider someone who, no matter their successes, feels they're always in the shadow of others. This complex can manifest from a young age, with constant comparisons to siblings or peers leading to chronic self-doubt and feelings of inadequacy. As adults, these individuals may avoid taking risks or pursuing ambitions due to a deep-seated fear of failure, ultimately limiting their potential and happiness. Superiority complex. Imagine a person who must always be the best or on top, not just to succeed, but to prove their worth. This often results from an overcompensation for hidden feelings of inadequacy. By belittling others or exaggerating their own accomplishments, they try to fortify their self-esteem, but often alienate themselves socially and perpetuate their internal conflict. Oedipus complex. In Freudian psychology, this complex revolves around a child's unconscious desire for the opposite sex parent and feelings of rivalry toward the same-sex parent. This complex is pivotal in shaping personality and future relationships. Failure to resolve this can lead to issues in forming healthy romantic relationships, often governed by this early template of love and rivalry. Electra complex. The female counterpart to the Oedipus complex, involving a daughter's competition with her mother for emotional and psychological possession of her father. This complex influences a girl's identity, self-esteem, and future romantic choices, potentially leading to repetitive patterns of rivalry in adult relationships. Imposter syndrome. This syndrome affects individuals who cannot believe in their own success, attributing their accomplishments to luck rather than ability, despite evidence to the contrary. It can lead to significant anxiety, stress, and a cycle of overworking as these individuals fear they must constantly prove their worth or risk being exposed as a fraud. Persecution complex. People with this complex feel they are being persecuted or conspired against unjustly. This often leads to paranoia and isolation as they perceive threats from many angles, potentially disrupting their ability to maintain relationships and function in social or work environments. Martyr complex. Individuals with this complex often sacrifice their own needs to help others, seeking validation through self-sacrifice. They may develop this complex as a response to feelings of guilt or low self-esteem, believing that they can only be loved or valued if they suffer or give up their own desires for the sake of others. God complex. This complex is characterized by an unshakable belief in one's own power and ability to influence or control events or people far beyond the norm. This often results in risky behavior, poor decision-making, and conflict with others as the individual ignores advice and insists on their own approach, often with disastrous consequences. Messiah complex. Individuals believe they are destined to save or significantly change the world. Driven by a profound sense of purpose, they often take on burdens that are unsustainable, leading to stress and potential burnout, and they may become disillusioned if their efforts do not achieve the anticipated transformative impact. Napoleon complex. Typically associated with shorter men, this complex involves aggressive or domineering behavior to compensate for perceived shortcomings in stature or other areas where they feel vulnerable. This overcompensation can affect interpersonal relationships and lead to conflicts as they strive to assert dominance. Madonna whore complex. This complex reflects a split view of female sexuality and identity, where a man categorizes women as either pure and virginal Madonnas or desirable but degraded whores. This dichotomy can severely impact relationships and a woman's self-perception as it limits the complex nature of female sexuality and identity. Hero complex. People with this complex are compelled to rescue others, needing to feel heroic and essential. This can stem from an underlying insecurity about one's value or a desire to be seen as a savior. The need to be a hero can put the individual and others at risk, especially if they create dangerous situations to resolve them. Peter Pan syndrome. Adults who display this syndrome refuse to embrace adult responsibilities, instead remaining perpetually in adolescence. This can be caused by fear, anxiety, or simply the desire to remain carefree. However, it often leads to difficulties in maintaining relationships, careers, and personal growth. Wendy syndrome. Named after the character from Peter Pan, who acts as the caregiver for others, this syndrome drives individuals to excessively nurture or care for others, often at the expense of their own needs. This can lead to codependent relationships where the person feels valued only as long as they are needed. Stockholm syndrome. This fascinating psychological response occurs when hostages or abuse victims bond with their captors or abusers. It is thought to be a coping mechanism where the victim, feeling powerless, seeks safety by siding with the captor. This complex interplay of fear, dependence, and survival can lead to confusing emotions and behaviors. Cassandra complex. Named after the Trojan prophetess who was cursed to utter true prophecies that were never believed, this complex affects those who feel their valid warnings or concerns are consistently dismissed. This can lead to feelings of frustration and despair as they are unable to act effectively on their insights. Atlas complex. Inspired by the mythological figure Atlas, who carried the sky on his shoulders, this complex drives individuals to bear enormous burdens alone. They often refuse help, driven by a need to prove their strength or value, which can lead to emotional exhaustion and loneliness. Dunning-Kruger effect. This cognitive bias involves a lack of metacognitive ability, leading people with low ability at a task to overestimate their own skills, often to the point of significant error, while failing to recognize their deficits. This can result in poor decision-making and overconfidence. Hybris syndrome. Observed primarily in powerful leaders, this syndrome describes a state where power corrupts one's perspective, leading to overconfident and destructive decisions. These individuals lose touch with reality and the practical limitations of their power, often leading to a dramatic fall. Abandonment complex. Stemming from real or imagined experiences of being left alone or neglected, especially during childhood.